Welcome back to Study Hall, where we like to take these complex topics and kind of break them down into something, something a little easier to digest.
That's right.
And today we are tackling something of a curveball,
Oh, yeah.
an executive order that essentially hits pause on enforcing the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
The FCPA.
The FCPA, yeah, for at least 6 months. So,
This is not just some, bureaucratic footnote either.
right.
This has sparked a debate with some serious implications.
Yeah, for American businesses.
Especially those operating overseas.
Exactly. So we're going to dive deep into the arguments for and against this move today. So you listening out there can make your own informed call.
Absolutely.
Now, quick recap for anyone maybe who needs it.
Yeah.
The FCPA, it basically prevents U.S. companies from bribing foreign officials to, get ahead in business deals, level playing field, all that good stuff.
The core of this executive order, though, is the argument that the FCPA actually hinders American businesses in the global market, especially in regions where, let's just say ethical standards may differ from our own. And it aims to boost U.S. economic competitiveness, and it even ties it directly to national security.
So it's saying that a more flexible approach
Right.
to international business dealings could actually strengthen America's position globally.
Exactly. The order argues that by easing up on FCPA enforcement, American companies can be more agile,
Okay.
secure more contracts, and ultimately bolster the U.S. economy, and that by extension strengthens national security.
Okay, so let's play this out.
Sure.
Let's say there's an American company, and they're in a bidding war to build a crucial deepwater port in a strategically important location. And they're up against a foreign company who is willing to, shall we say, sweeten the deal for some local officials. The executive order suggests that under the current FCPA rules, the American company might be at a disadvantage, potentially losing out, not just on profit, but also on a project that could have national security implications.
Now, the order also highlights some other potential benefits.
Okay.
It claims that this pause will reduce the legal and compliance burdens for companies, saving them money and resources.
Okay.
It even suggests that by shifting focus away from the FCPA, prosecutors can concentrate on other priorities.
Like what?
Like national security threats or domestic law enforcement issues.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
But of course there are concerns, right?
Of course.
It's not all sunshine and roses just because we cut some red tape.
Indeed, critics argue that this pause on the FCPA essentially opens the door to increased corruption. They say that by allowing American companies to engage in bribery, even temporarily, we risk eroding ethical standards, not just for those companies, but for the global marketplace as a whole.
It sounds like a slippery slope argument. If we allow this, now where does it end?
That's a key concern for many. They worry that this could trigger a race to the bottom where ethical conduct becomes a liability in international business.
And then there's also the issue of America's reputation globally, right? We've long championed these anti-corruption efforts.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't this move send mixed messages and potentially harm our standing as a leader in ethical business practices?
Absolutely. And the order's critics also point out that this pause could disproportionately benefit large multinational corporations with vast resources while putting smaller companies who often rely on their ethical reputation at a disadvantage.
So it's not as straightforward as saying, let's boost American businesses full steam ahead.
Right.
There are some potential downsides to consider, both for individual companies and for the U.S.'s image abroad.
Precisely. And that brings us to the heart of this debate.
Okay.
What's the acceptable trade-off between economic competitiveness and ethical conduct?
Yeah.
Is it ever justifiable to compromise our principles for profit, especially on the international stage?
Those are some weighty questions and definitely not ones with easy answers.
No.
But that's what we're here to unlink.
Exactly. We've laid out the arguments for and against this executive order, but we need to go deeper. We need to explore the potential long-term consequences, the legal challenges this order might face, and ultimately what this all means for the future of American business in a globalized world.
Buckle up, listeners. Things are about to get really interesting.
Indeed they are. We were talking about some of the ethical and economic considerations before the break.
Right.
But there's another layer we need to peel back here. The potential legal challenges this executive order could face.
Okay, so it's not just whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
Ethically, strategically, it's also about if it's even legal.
That's right. Some legal experts argue that this executive order could be an overreach of executive power,
Right.
particularly if it interferes with ongoing FCPA investigations or contradicts the original intent of the law as passed by Congress.
So Congress makes the rules of the game,
Yeah.
and now the executive branch is trying to change them without, going through the proper channels.
That's a simplified way of putting it, but you've captured the essence of the concern. It raises questions about the separation of powers and whether the executive branch can just unilaterally alter a law established by Congress.
And this isn't just a theoretical debate either.
Right, yeah.
There could be real-world consequences if this ends up in court.
Absolutely. Imagine a company is under investigation for FCPA violations, and then this executive order comes along and potentially puts their case in jeopardy.
Wow.
That could lead to lawsuits and legal challenges that could tie this up for years.
So it sounds like this executive order could create more legal headaches than it solves.
At least in the short term, it's certainly a possibility. And this legal uncertainty could also have a chilling effect on businesses.
How so?
Companies might be hesitant to make major decisions or pursue international deals while this legal cloud hangs over the FCPA.
So even if a company wants to take advantage of this pause,
Right.
they might be a little hesitant knowing that things could change.
Exactly. It's a risky proposition and one that many companies might not be willing to gamble on.
All right, so we've got ethical concerns, potential economic impacts, and now legal challenges to consider.
We do.
It seems like this executive order has opened up a real Pandora's box.
It certainly sparked a multifaceted debate. And this brings us back to the fundamental question we touched on earlier. What is the role of the United States in the global arena?
It's almost like this whole situation is forcing us to ask ourselves, what do we stand for?
Precisely. Do we prioritize economic competitiveness above all else, even if it means potentially compromising our values, or do we hold firm to our commitment to ethical conduct?
Right.
Even if it means facing economic challenges in a global marketplace where not everyone plays by the same rules.
It's a tough balancing act.
It is.
And I don't envy the policymakers who have to grapple with these decisions.
There are no easy answers here.
Yep.
But what we can do is equip ourselves with knowledge and understanding so we can participate in this conversation in a meaningful way.
And that's what we aim to do here at Study Hall. Give our listeners the tools to analyze these complex issues, think critically about different perspectives, and form their own informed opinions.
Because ultimately, it's up to each of us as informed citizens to decide what kind of world we want to live in, what values we want to uphold, and what sacrifices we're willing to make to achieve those goals.
So as we move toward the final part of our deep dive today, I want to pose a question to our listeners.
Okay.
If you were in charge, how would you weigh these competing priorities? Where would you draw the line between economic gain and ethical conduct in international business?
It's a tough one.
It is.
But take some time to reflect on that question. We'll be right back to wrap up our exploration of this complex and timely issue.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the potential benefits to the ethical and legal challenges. But there's one piece we haven't talked about.
What's that?
This pause on FCPA enforcement.
Yeah.
It's temporary.
Right.
We're talking 180 days.
Right.
Maybe a 180-day extension. So what happens after that?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. This pause could simply be a timeout.
Okay.
A chance for the government to reevaluate its approach to the FCPA, maybe tweak some enforcement priorities, and then it's back to business as usual.
Or, and this is the scenario I think that has a lot of people on edge.
Yeah.
This pause could be the first step towards a permanent weakening of the FCPA.
Right.
It could signal a major shift in America's commitment to fighting corruption globally.
And that's a shift that could have ripple effects far beyond the business world.
Right.
It could impact our relationships with other countries, our reputation as a global leader, even our own sense of who we are as a nation.
So we're left with more questions than answers.
It seems that way.
Will this pause lead to meaningful reforms?
Right.
Make the FCPA more effective, or will it open the door to a much more ethically ambiguous global marketplace?
Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, this executive order has sparked a crucial conversation, one that we all need to be a part of.
And that's what we're all about here at Study Hall.
Absolutely.
Equipping you with the knowledge, different perspectives, thought-provoking questions, and then we hand you the reins.
Exactly. It's up to each of us to grapple with these complex issues, decide where we stand, and use our voices to shape the future we want to see.
So as we wrap up today's deep dive,
Yes.
we want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question to ponder.
All right.
If you were in charge, How would you balance the competing priorities of economic gain and ethical conduct in international business dealings?
It's a tough one.
It is, but it's a question worth pondering.
Absolutely. The answers we come up with, both individually and collectively, will determine the kind of world we create, not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep diving deep.
And remember, there's always more to learn.